Our program this morning is Finance and Governance of Capital Cities in Federal Systems. That, coincidentally, is the title of a book by authors Enid Slack and Rupak Chattopadhyay. Thank you. With contributions from Dr. Gandhi here in DC. One of the questions we are looking at this morning is the extent to which capital cities and their governance is unique from cities of comparable size, demographics, and if their situation is made even more unique by their role inside a federal system. In their book, the authors looked at Canberra, Brussels, Ottawa, Addis Ababa, Berlin, Mexico City, Abuja, Bern, and Washington, D.C.
Issues that we do have a very limited, constrained, narrow tax base. Of every $100 that are earned in the city, we get to tax only $34. Other $66 get taxed in Maryland and Virginia. It's like going to a restaurant and we would say, of all the people who are eating here, only 1/3 will pay, 2/3 will not pay. And then everybody would complain about bad food and bad service. So whenever a commuter here complains to me about potholes and all that, I say, well, look into the mirror and you will find the answer why we have this problem. More than that, roughly 40% of our real property values are exempt from taxes. Federal government next door here, I mean, we're very proud of being the seat of the nation's government here, but that has profound cost. Before we moved to the Wilson building here, I used to have an office on 441 Judiciary Square, and you look outside the window on 11th floor office, and you see nothing but museums, galleries, monuments, lovely, lovely places, but nothing I could tax. So because of all that, because of the height limitation, which really makes a beautiful city, but there is no tax base, and that is the fundamental problem.
Now, the heart of the issue is when we started this, people looked at us and wondered, why do you want to study capitals? What's different about them? Are they really different from other cities? And as we did our project, we really began to appreciate that capitals are really distinct from other cities in federations. I mean, and national capitals, therefore, have to play a very, very important role in somehow reflecting the diversity of their countries and providing a neutral space for politics and public policy to play out. They also have to have, they also play an important role in that they are not, they should not be seen to be captured by the interests of any one regional, ethnic, linguistic group. Every capital has a unique story in terms of location. I mean, we've got an illustrative list here. I mean, in South Africa, after transition to majority rule, had a very difficult time finding a single place to put its capital. But in reflecting the divided nature of the country, for pragmatic reasons, they continued to run the government and bureaucracy out of Pretoria, now called Tshwane, but decided that to counterbalance a concentration of power in Pretoria by locating Parliament in Cape Town, several hundred miles away. Abuja in Nigeria was a purpose-built capital from the late 1980s onwards, when construction started, to locate the capital in a neutral zone, if you will, between the historic north and the historic south, southern regions. Berlin, symbol of reunification. There was a long and hard debate about whether to move the capital from Bonn to Berlin after reunification, and the decision was made because this was symbolic of the reconstruction of Germany, and also because Berlin again sat on the fault line between East and West Germany. I mean, Nat was talking about a $500 million deficit or debt that DC had taken on. Well, Berlin in deciding to move the federal government to Berlin, the city of Berlin, the city and state of Berlin, was saddled with a debt of $60 billion, which they've had a very difficult time paying off, because Berlin, in addition to capital city functions, had to absorb a lot of the costs associated with bringing East Berlin in infrastructurally and sort of personnel-wise up. Canberra, again, the choice was, well, it's not Melbourne, Adelaide, or Sydney. And in setting up Canberra, the big cities mandated that a capital must be set up in the middle of the country so that it had no access to ports, because all cities in Australia are on the coast, and they felt that somehow their importance would be eclipsed if a national capital was set up on the coast. So you see these tensions are playing out in the way capital cities are organized. Now,
I'm going to talk about a little bit about the governing structure and the finance. And there are basically three models of governing structure that are used in capital cities in federal countries. Now, as Rupak mentioned, we only have 11 cities in the book. There are 26 federal countries, so we don't have them all. And so federal districts are an interesting model. That's where the national seat of government is not under the jurisdiction of any one state or province. And you could see why a national government would want to do that. They would want to have complete control over their capital cities and not be fighting with a state government about what's happening. One of the issues around federal districts is the issue of local democratic and accountability deficit. So there's a feeling that Rupak talked at the beginning about the balance between the national interest and local interest. The interest of being a capital city for the whole country, but people living their daily lives and wanting services delivered by their local government. And the federal district model moves more towards that national perspective and away from the local perspective. And there's often limited fiscal autonomy for federal districts. One of the good things, though, is there's direct access to federal funds. So if you're a city in a province, you're fighting like everybody else for money. In a federal district model, there's that direct route to the federal funds. City-states combine local and state functions, as we mentioned, but unlike a federal district, there are no restrictions on those state functions. So the city, for example, like Berlin has city functions and state functions. So there's less federal influence over the capital city under this model than any of the other models, because this is like any other state government. The third model of cities in a province or state, here, and this is the Ottawa example. Ottawa is a city just like any other city in the province of Ontario. It gets most of its funding from the provincial government. The federal government gives very little money to cities in Canada because constitutionally cities are creatures of the provinces. That doesn't mean the federal government has no role or no influence on capital cities under this model. In the Ottawa example, they've set up a national capital commission that does a lot of planning and tourism functions. And municipalities who are capital cities are always asking for federal compensation. We provide all kinds of services because we're a capital city that other cities don't provide. There's no federal compensation for capital cities in South Africa, and I remember asking our author, Nico Statler, why that was the case, and he said, well, everybody wants to be the capital city. The last thing they're going to do is go to the federal government and ask for money to do that because they don't want to lose the status of being a capital city, which tells you a little bit about the benefits and costs. You know, if they're not running out looking for compensation, they obviously are making a calculation that the benefits of being the capital city outweigh the costs.